Welcome, everyone, to this evening's broadcast of OASCA, Ask Me Anything About Astropreneurship. This evening, we'll be focusing on the topic of space debris. My name is Perry Lam, and I'm the chair for OASA Hong Kong, as well as I'll be your moderator for this evening's session as such. So with that, let me open up and welcome Cynthia, please, to put on our slides. So those of you who are joining us for the first time, who is OASA? Well, OASA stands for the Orion Astropreneurship Space Academy. Based here in Hong Kong, we're an accelerator, startup, and we focus in on the development and the talent of young global leaders to help in terms of special design journeys and wicked challenges in the arrival of today's new space economy. And in the coming future, we'll be providing a series of these monthly forums. It's always on the Thursday of the third week of the month. And with that as such, I'd like to go further in terms of today's session. Cynthia, please. So what is an entrepreneur? Well, an entrepreneur, as you can tell, is a combination between astro and entrepreneurship. In today's new space economy, that's where we are to help today's youth and young professionals to make and get space readiness for the new space economy career opportunities. Next, please, Cynthia. So to begin with, we're going to ask everyone, we're going to open up a poll and to please vote just to test the water in terms of our sense of space debris. Our first question as we open up the poll, Cynthia, will be the following. So the question is, how much do you know about space debris? So can you click on and vote from a score of 1 to 5? 1 being I know absolutely nothing about space debris. 5, I'm an expert. In fact, I'm so knowledgeable of the topic that I should be speaking. And quite frankly, we'll welcome you to our next Ask Me About Anything About Astropreneurship. So with that, I'm going to give 5 more seconds for everyone to please vote. And then we will close the polls. And then from there, we'll share the findings and give you a sense of what our benchmark is for this evening. So we're going to have 5 seconds, 4 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second. Close the polls now, please. All right, the polls are closed. Now let's take a look at what are the results. So as you can see here, the majority of the individuals attending today is looking at 55% in terms of their knowledge from 2 to 5, number 2, of how much they know about space debris. So we're going to do this again at the end of today's session and just get a sense of how much we could gain in terms of insights, knowledge, and experience from our 2 speakers, as well as our question poser, and you have the opportunity also to put in questions within the chat itself. So let's close the poll now, and let me begin with introducing our first speaker for this evening. So our first speaker is a very familiar face, and not only OASA, but also to this program, Ask Me Anything About Astropreneurship. And with that, it's our Professor Quentin Parker. Professor Parker is not only the director of the LSR, the Laboratory of Hong Kong Youth Space Research, but also he's the vice chair at OASA itself. And he's an authority in terms of the academics and the practical knowledge of the new space economy. So with that, what we will do is we'll invite Quentin Parker up to the stage and share with us for the next 5 to 6 minutes a few insights in terms of space debris, and then we'll open up to our next speaker as well as questions. So with that, Quentin Parker, Professor Parker, can I invite you to stage, please, and share with us your insights in terms of this month's topic, space debris. Quentin, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Perry. I've only got 5 or 6 minutes, so I'll get straight into it. What is space debris? It's all the rubbish up there from all the satellites that we've been launching since the very first one with Sputnik right up to today. Many satellites go up there, they eventually burn up in the Earth's atmosphere because orbits decay, but many now stay up there for decades or even centuries if you do nothing about it. So this is all about the debris field in low Earth orbit. In context, we're spending huge sums of money now in space, maybe $1 trillion by the end of this decade invested in space. Now, most of that is through satellites that are in low Earth orbit. So you can see from the top level satellite industry findings how things are changing. Now, I'm sure these slides will be available later for people to digest when they have more time. But basically, the message is that the new space economy is going gangbusters. Even Elon Musk on his own is launching thousands of Starlink satellites. But what is going on up in low Earth orbit with all these launches? Well, there's something called the Kessler syndrome. And the Kessler syndrome is where satellites collide into each other, creating enormous debris fields because the satellites destroy each other via the very high velocities of impact. That creates vast numbers of small particles that can then collide with other satellites. And if there's too much debris up there, then you actually get something called a runaway effect. You get everything colliding with everything else, and eventually everything is debris. You've got no satellites left. They've all been destroyed by other bits of debris, and low Earth orbit becomes uninhabitable for doing anything. Now, if that happens, most of the modern tech we rely upon today will stop working. So space junk is dangerous because once you get past a critical mass in terms of debris, then it just keeps on increasing. It's a chain reaction that happens. Debris colliding into other debris, colliding into satellites, creating more debris. Okay, so you can look up the Kessler syndrome in Wikipedia, and I'll leave that for later. The debris comes from over 11,000 satellites that we've launched into space in the last 60 years. Now there's about 8,000 of these are still operational, and just under 5,000 are not, and that's just junk now, junk. And that junk is dangerous because some of it's very large and it can clutter up the Earth's low Earth atmosphere. If you look at this debris field, you can see every single dot there is debris. The pink dots are out in further orbits. The ones that look like they're defining a planet here, that's all the low Earth orbit debris. All those other tracks there are satellites and debris going around that we can track with our systems here on Earth and see where they are. But close into the Earth, low Earth orbit, that's what you're seeing there. Looks like you're defining a planet just with the amount of debris there is. So low Earth orbit is the key concern for us, between 180 and 2,000 kilometers altitude, but mostly less than about 500 to 600 kilometers, okay? Takes about 90 minutes for any object up there typically to do one orbit around the Earth. And that's low Earth orbit. So I don't need to talk about the other Earth orbits for now. The one that's the biggest concern is low Earth orbit. If you wonder how much debris is up there, well, there's about 130 million pieces of debris between 1 millimeter in size to about a centimeter. Now, if you think that the space shuttle, one of the space shuttle's windows was almost destroyed by a small particle of paint, then you get the idea. There are about 36,500 items which are greater than 10 centimeters in size. If one of those 36,500 items hit the International Space Station, it would destroy it. So here's just chart showing the amount of debris increasing almost exponentially now, and now they're in beyond 2020. So it's a really serious problem that we need to try to solve. Huge business of our trap. You look at Starlink, this is Elon Musk, huge numbers of satellite launches. Okay, that can contribute to the problem. Now, international collaboration and regulation is urgently required to address it. People are talking about it, but it's still a bit like the Wild West up there. You know, spacefaring nations can almost do what the hell they like. I mean, there's control over frequencies for communications, but not control of the number of satellites you can put up there. It's a really serious problem we need to address. Here's the robotic arm on the International Space Station. A small particle went through the robot arm. They discovered in about May 2021. If that had gone through the main part of the space station where people are living, there would have been a serious problem. So a 0.2 millimeter fleck of paint traveling at 7 kilometers per second has the same destructive force as a hand grenade. It's all about kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is defined as E energy equals half mv squared. M is the mass of the particle, V is velocity. Now mass is really small for a fleck of paint, but the velocity is really, really high. And then you square it, and that's where you get these enormous energies from. Small fleck of paint almost destroyed the space shuttle. Small fleck of paint hit the International Space Station's viewing cupola and created this huge dent in the screen. If that had been a bit bigger, it would have punched right through and possibly killed everybody on board. So, 2 satellites collided recently and created this enormous debris field. So we have to do something about it. And so this is what this question and answer sequence is about. What do we do with space debris? How can we solve the problem? Should we be worried? And the answer is yes. So thank you very much indeed. I'm going to stop sharing there, and I think that's the end of my time, Perry.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Quentin. You know, what dawns on me immediately is the following. Who's taking care of this? I mean, there's space debris from which you just shared with us. It's being created almost on a daily basis, right? Whose responsibility? Who is actually looking after this, being the custodian of space junk? Are you there, Quentin?
Sorry, yes, I am. Thank you for the question. So yes, NASA and other agencies are actually tracking the larger pieces of debris, hence those plots I showed with all those orbital tracks and particles at instantaneous point of debris. So we kind of know the scale of the problem, but we're not doing anything about solving it. People are researching it, are thinking about it. University research groups are looking at what they can do to try to mitigate it. New regulations are being introduced by some agencies about if you launch a satellite, then after a given amount of time, its lifetime, it needs to be able to deorbit itself. It must have something in the design of the satellite that will enable it to enter the Earth's atmosphere and burn up and not be a piece of debris. So that's happening, but not happening quickly enough.
All right. So why don't we do this, Quentin? That's great sharing. Thank you very much for that. Let's move on and invite our next speaker, Ivan Lee, who is our research analyst here, to share his views in terms of from the impact investor side of this particular topic. And then let's come back and open up discussion for the participants here and the issue of space debris and what could be done about it, what is some concern us about it, and what perhaps could be the future of it as such. So with that, it's my pleasure and honor also to welcome another familiar face to OASA, our own Ivan Lee. Ivan, like Quentin's, been very active in sharing and supporting with us our Space Business Breakfast, as well as our sessions here at Ask Me About Anything About Astropreneurship. So Ivan is a senior associate at Advanced Fair Investment Management as such, and he's here today to share some insights from his perspective of space debris, or as Quentin eloquently shared with us, space junk. So with that, Ivan, the stage is yours. Please take it away.
Thank you, Perry, and thank you, Professor. It's very interesting to know more about the science part of the space debris. But for me, when I talk about space debris from a business perspective, or I intuitively I would think of that. It's like talking about sustainability or waste management in the context of space. Next page, please, Cynthia. So I worked in the field of corporate sustainability and ESG, and I work with listed companies or corporate clients regarding the issues of emissions, waste management, water management, or even climate change, right? Space debris, in some sense, is quite similar to all these environmental issues like climate change, but it will be in the space context because it's all about how things become more risky in space in the way that we do business or new space economy because of the pollutions. So if we are to explore more on what are the opportunities coming out of space debris or what's the business perspective, it's quite useful for us to reference back to the timeline or the ecosystem of sustainability on Earth. So in general, when we talk about the environmental issues or the ecosystem of sustainability on Earth, we see that there are different parties right now working towards these issues. So for example, there are consultants who use their expertise in environmental science or climate science to advise these companies on how to address these issues to avoid this kind of risk. And also we have impact measurements or data provider to measure and monitor environmental issues on Earth. And we also have think tank or advocacy group or even investor groups or rating agencies in these kind of issues. So when we come back to the space debris issues, the same also applies. We can witness that there is a growing trend in terms of satellites monitoring, space debris monitoring through radar or through satellites to help you avoid the collision of with other space debris. And we also have data provider to assess, to calculate the risk of your satellites of your new space company of collision. And also we have sustainability rating, or even we have space insurer who cover new space company on their space insurance of the collision risk. Next page, please. And also similar to waste management on Earth, for new space companies or users of space, we should also think about the 3R or the 4Rs. How do we reduce waste creation or space junks for the Earth, for the space? How do we reuse or extend the lifetime of our spacecrafts? And how do we recycle or actually recover material from space debris? That's another potential aspect. Next page, please. So when we talk about the 3Rs of space junks, we can see that there are different new business models coming out of these. We have removal. We have some companies, not just Japan, not just US. In China, we also have space debris removal startups thinking about how to develop satellites or spacecraft to remove other end-of-life satellites or space debris from the low Earth orbit. And we also have some of the reuse business case, such as providing on-orbit installation, maintenance, or refueling service to extend the lifetime of operational satellites. So if we can extend the lifetime of satellites, we can potentially reduce other new space debris. And we also have recycling companies to build metal foundries in space with the use of space debris as input resources. So if we are to build a habitat in space, in different planets, we have to think about how to recycle these resources. Yeah. So next page, please. So not just business, not just private sector. The public sector, the companies, the countries are also doing a lot in terms of piloting or how to monitor or how to regulate space debris. So all of these government policy or spending project, they will create a value on space junks. So that space sectors, the private sector could be attracted to solve these issues because of the incentives. So for example, in Europe or in the US, they are funding a lot of pilot projects to remove satellites or remove space debris. And also in China, we can see a recent project in funding like over 70 millions annually on AI project, how to develop the algorithms and also how to recognize the space debris and to help other operational satellites to avoid these kind of collisions. So this is the end of my part. Just a quick overview from a business or from a non-science perspective.
Yes, Ivan, thank you very much for sharing those most valuable insights. I guess one thing that comes immediately to mind is this. Everyone's focusing today on SDG as well as ESG for investment purposes. Obviously, this must be a critical issue in terms of looking at investments from a perspective of the future, because the potential of space, multi-million-dollar opportunity there, who is looking after the responsibility for cleaning up the space from a investment business perspective, right?
Yep. I think the same tricky problem happens on Earth as well, because when we look at waste management startups or companies on Earth, there is always one business questions or business difficulty that they face is that what is the value or who are paying for the cleanup, right? So I think that the government budget or the government regulation will potentially be a strong business case for new space companies to clean up the space debris, because right now there is no incentive, right? No one will do that voluntarily because it's not cheap. I mean, for the private sector, so that the governments or the national agencies will create a strong business case in this sense. And then also the other private space companies like Starlink, I mean SpaceX, and all the mega constellation space company, they will pay for this service as well. So this will create an ecosystem for waste management in space, I would say.
Excellent. And I see a hand here. Let me call on Professor Quentin Parker for just a moment. Then I'll introduce our question poser for the evening. So Quentin, your hand is raised.
Yeah, it's just in relation to what was just said. The point, about making a corollary with waste management on Earth, that each country has its own waste issues and you can sort them out within the country. Stuff gets sent around the world through recycling here, there, and everywhere. But the thing about the low Earth orbit environment is it's completely global around the Earth. So the problem is one of the entire thing. So if it becomes uninhabitable through the Kessler syndrome, then every single thing is affected, not just one country's pollution, but the entire ecosystem for the entire planet, the entire industry. That's the difference.
Yes, very interesting. I mean, there's a multi-billion-dollar industry in cleaning up space debris on its own. So with that, let me call Cynthia to bring up the slide, and I'd like to introduce now our question poser, who is a marketing executive for SML Consulting, and she's got her bachelor's and IBBA with concentrations in marketing and entrepreneurship. So Inez, welcome to our first for you. Ask me anything about Astropreneurship, and let's bring up the questions you have for our two panel of experts here. So the first question and slide, please, Cynthia. Question number 1. Inez, this question is yours.
Okay, what kind of threat does space debris pose to people on Earth, or can the debris re-enter Earth's the atmosphere?
Shall I answer that, Perry?
Yes, please, Quentin.
Very good question, because it's actually more to it than might meet the eye. In terms of space debris coming down from deorbiting satellites, the risk to actually hitting anyone on Earth, which is perhaps the main meaning of the question, is extremely remote. Same as being hit by a meteorite is extremely remote. It's higher than it used to be because there's a lot more people now, and there's a bit more space debris coming down than it used to be. Some of the very large space missions, which are very large rockets, they enter the Earth's atmosphere, don't completely burn up. And some of them, like old space stations, can hit the ground or hit the ocean, which is 2/3 of the surface, and create a problem. But so far, nobody's been hit by any of these things in the whole history of space flight. But in terms of other risks to people on Earth, well, if you think about it, if we have no working satellites in low Earth orbit, that means we have no telecommunications properly. That means that we're missing emergency calls, people are dying because they're not being found, the GPS isn't working, you get lost, fall off a cliff, blah, blah, blah. So in other more sophisticated ways, space debris, if it knocks out the utility of low Earth orbit, is an existential threat to everything we do with the technology up there, and all sorts of things stop working, and who knows what the risks are to life and limb with all of that.
Thank you for that, Quentin. And I see here on our chat a couple of comments from Dr. G. Firstly, space pushes humanity to work together. And also another insight that he's sharing with us is that Hong Kong can actually get involved here in Hong Kong through China and the UN. So there's some excellent opportunities. Could I call on Inez for your second question? Then I'll come back to the chats and open it up to the participants. So Inez, your second question, please.
Thank you, Professor, for answering the first question. And the second question is, how do satellites located in low Earth orbit protect themselves from known space debris objects? And can they be remotely controlled to maneuver their avoidance? And if yes, how often it's done? Maybe on average, yeah.
I can answer that again, but I don't know if the other speaker wants to try that. I know a bit more about this potentially. First of all, most satellites, very expensive ones, the big ones, they have maneuverability and they can move out of the way. The International Space Station can move out of the way of debris, and has actually done that very many times. The Starlink satellites that Elon Musk has, they've had to do 30,000 different maneuvers in the last year or two to move out of the way of potential debris. So it's getting more and more serious. There's more and more maneuverings going on there, and it's more and more difficult to stay out of the way of debris.
All right, thank you very much for that, Quentin. And I'm going to now go to our chat lines, and I'm going to invite some of the questions that have been asked by our audience. So KY, can you turn on your camera? I see here in the chat line, and we'll bring you up to the stage. KY, are you camera ready? So the question in KY is asked is the following. There are a lot of hidden issues on the space debris problems. Economics, responsibilities, incentives, laws, etc. We need someone to take the lead on this. So maybe let's look at it from Ivan. Would you like to field this question? Who do you think should be taking more responsibility in terms of the overall area of space debris? And maybe from your perspective, from the investment perspective, from the ESG perspective, who do you think would be appropriate bodies to help manage this?
Yep. It's still down to the government or national agency, in my opinion, because that's the same for ESG on Earth as well, right? Because when there is a compliance issue, company will look at it like seriously, right? If we talk to them and tell them it's existential crisis or it's environmental, it's a responsibility, right? They will just try to delay the decision or delay the investment or delay the actions as far as possible, right? They will not have that actions immediately. But when the compliance issues or when the regulations comes in, they will act quickly. So I think the responsibility or the incentive can be created primarily through the national agencies, space agencies, and the government. And also, I think that for startups, right, for investors or for people who are interested in the new space economy can play a role as well, because we can see so many innovations in the space economy recently, right? We can see innovations or technology advancement in different areas. And why not space debris, right? If we have that awareness, if investors push startups to think about that, then new innovations can come out, I believe, right? Professor, you have more knowledge on the technology of removal and difficulty. I'm sure that's difficult, right? But I'm sure that in the near future, if more people pay attention, more startups, more investors, more entrepreneurs pay attention, then some new innovations will come out, right? Right now, we just don't have a cure, as Professor said, for space debris problem.
Yeah, there's a lot of startups. In this field, startups come and go, and they fail quite regularly because there's no way to monetize it currently that's guaranteed. I mean, people, research into this is what university research groups do, and government agencies do. Startups don't have the resources or the likelihood to succeed on the short timescales that startups need to succeed in to be able to deliver on this. So it's not surprising it's an issue for them. But the government and agencies, NASA, ESA, the Russians and the Chinese, etc., and university groups around the world have been actively working on this, trying to solve the problem. It's not easy, or we've solved it already. There's all sorts of technology ideas are out there. Some tech demonstrators have been done on small scale, whether it's nets or grappling hooks or magnets or all sorts of ideas are up there to try to solve the problem. For me, the best thing to do would be to go after the very largest defunct satellites that are up there and get rid of them, deorbit them, or send them out into much higher orbit and send them away from the Earth, or send them crashing into the Earth, one or the other. Because if you leave them up there and they collide with something, then they can create enormous fields of debris on their own. And they're also low-hanging fruit, which you can grab more easily. They're easier to track, to find, and then they're worth a lot. And you can potentially even mine them for the metals and things they have in there and convert them into something more useful rather than just send them crashing to Earth. I know there's ideas about that as well. So there's all sorts of things, but that's my thoughts on it at the moment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And then let me ask one more question before we go to the question wheel for this evening. Cody Wang asked the following. She states, thank you for the great insights. Given space debris is a global issue that affects all countries, how, if at all, could smaller non-space powers, including cities like Hong Kong, participate in resolving this issue? Or is the issue mostly confined to the major powers? So in I guess other words, what can we do here in Hong Kong to address this issue in regards to the space junk or space debris? Thoughts from anyone?
I have some thoughts, but maybe Ivan, do you want to chip in first and I'll follow up?
Yeah, sure. This question just remind me of the famous saying that like with greater power like comes greater responsibility, right? So if for the larger creator of space debris or potential space debris, then they will surely have a larger role to play and influence, right? And I mean, it's like other issues in the space economy or space landscape. And these large national space agencies in Europe, in US, in Russia, in China, they have to come together. But simply now they just don't have a international connection on this front. So I think that that's something that we have to pay attention on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ivan. Yeah, on that, I'd say two things. First, of course, is that it just takes one brilliant idea from one individual anywhere to come up with something that could solve part of the problem. And that can be anywhere on the planet. You know, you can throw billions of dollars at a problem and have some great minds working on it. And then somebody working in a small technical university in Calcutta suddenly comes up with a solution. You know, sometimes that's the way the world works. Of course, the other thing is I believe there's a role for the United Nations here. United Nations is a body to try to get all the countries on board to sign up to an agreement of some kind to regulate the way we use low Earth orbit in particular. And so I think that's really important to do that. Of course, you're right that the people that pollute should pay for their pollution. We're trying to do that with fossil fuel companies now, but I think you can extend it to the big multinational companies like SpaceX, Starlink that are sending up thousands of satellites. It's in their own best interest to keep that low Earth orbit environment healthy so that they can send up their satellites, or else they don't have a business model. And so that, I think, is really important as well.
Thank you, Quentin. And I notice on the chat line here, KY is providing a very good insight, suggesting that maybe some of the brands, even the local brands here in Hong Kong, could sponsor on specific cleaning projects to make that part of their corporate culture and corporate values. And with that, they can not only get the awareness, but also supporting ESG.
Yeah, I think one role, we mentioned about what role can Hong Kong possibly play here. And I think the role that Hong Kong can play is in its regulatory framework and its legal framework, which is world recognized as being extremely strong for investment, environment as well. So, startup companies with promising ideas for space debris removal will need investment. And I think the city of Hong Kong as a fintech and robust financial center is in that kind of assistance through being able to funnel venture capital into the right startup companies that have the best chances of success. And it also needs government green light and encouragement behind the scenes to help that happen.
Thank you, Quentin. I'm looking at the clock here and it's 7:05. Can I invite Cynthia, please, because I know she's taken some questions from the audience prior to this, and she's put it into a special opportunity here. But Inez, this is your third question. Could we come to that? Question 3, Inez?
Yeah, as Professor Quentin already mentioned and Ivan also mentioned, it's a very global issue and international issue, and every country must work on mitigation of space junk. And may I ask what kind of international agreements aim to mitigate space debris already, like at the moment, and what kind of actions are already being taken?
All right, Ivan and Quentin, would you like to field this?
I can say a couple of things. Ivan, do you want to go first again?
Yeah, you go first. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, there is regulations now in place among certain agencies, but not all, that when they send a spacecraft up now, it needs to have built into it a technical capability to deorbit itself. So, of course, if that was adopted by every spacefaring nation, that every time they sent up anything, it was able to deorbit itself through fancy technology. It doesn't necessarily need to be thrusters and fuel based. It could be something to do with, solar reflection technology that helps it deorbit and things like that. Then that would actually start to solve the problem over time. So that's one thing, and that is, because of course they're aware of the problem. It's just that they haven't really been cooperating and really trying to solve it with the degree of urgency that I believe the Kessler syndrome mandates. Anyway, that's my comment. Over to you, Ivan.
Yeah, I also think that there is another international agreement that you can actively create more space debris, right? You just can't do that kind of like weapon test that you create like tiny fragments of space debris anymore. But all of these are really confined on not actively producing more, but then there is no agreement yet, international agreement yet, on how to reduce existing space debris. So there is some pilot scheme, pilot program, but there is just nothing in large scale to remove space debris just now.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen, for both sharing of your insights as such. Now let's kind of invite Cynthia, please, to bring the questions. So, any questions from the chat box in terms of our participants, or we'll go on to the magic wheel?
I actually see one interesting questions earlier, by
yes.
Right. So Fletcher asked, can we use space debris removing techniques to also remove Earth debris or treasures such as landfills, uranium, etc.? Yeah. I'm not an expert on this front, so I'll leave it to you, Professor Quinton. But I think that removing space debris will be much more difficult than on Earth, right? So that.
Yes, I can help clean up a beach, but I can't help clean up debris in space by going there myself at the moment, even if I wanted to.
Okay. Great. Thank you. All right. So, Cynthia, let's look at the lucky draw now, your magic wheel. So these are the list of questions that Cynthia's polled, and they're coming up at random. So the first question, as everyone can see, is the following. What is the most effective way to handle space debris? So I would turn that over to anyone who would like to share. I see Quentin, you're on mute now. Mic is yours.
We don't have an effective way to handle space debris yet. Sorry.
Yeah. So there's the message there, the opportunity. We should really focus in terms of this as a priority for us, both in terms of not only a quality of life, but also in terms of both the economic factors and the implications of humanity. Great. Ivan, have you got a thought here?
Yeah, I agree that there is no effective way, but I can only say that the most cost-effective way or the most feasible way right now is to just stop or slow down creating more, I would say, because of the Kessler syndrome that Professor talked about. Like if we create more and there is exponential, the space debris will increase like exponentially, right? So yeah.
Yeah, we almost need a body like air space traffic control, right? In terms of everything that's being launched and managing that. All right, let's look at the next one, Cynthia. The next question is orbital debris uniformly distributed about the Earth? Well, I think there was some slides we saw on this earlier for you, Quentin, right?
Yes, I mean, you can see that in low Earth orbit, it kind of looks like it's uniformly distributed because there's so many particles of it. I mean, once you get to smaller and smaller particles, the distribution tends to get more uniform because orbits change over time. But, when you have big debris fields from a big collision, then those orbits start off quite constrained, but after time, they just spread out. And of course, you go to higher orbits and low Earth orbit, then they're more constrained into preferred orbits for certain kinds of applications down on Earth, for communication satellites, geostationary satellites, etc. So you could see that from the two slides I actually had.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. All right. So with that as such, I think there's one more question that we have, Cynthia. So the third question here is the following. Is there any new material or manufacturing method that could be more space environmentally friendly?
Does it mean environmentally friendly in terms of saving low Earth environment from the dreaded Kessler syndrome? The trouble is, if you're going to put an object up into space, then it has to survive the harsh environment of space in order to function as a satellite. If it doesn't function as a satellite and work and send data back down to Earth, it's just a piece of space junk straight away.
Right.
Rather than later when it stops working because it's run out of power or bit's broken off or it's past its useful lifetime and it's gone to a lower orbit and can't function properly. So in terms of manufacturing material, it would be something that helps with the automatic deorbiting of satellites after their useful life has expired.
Okay, thank you, Quentin. So now it's 7:13. Cynthia, can I invite you please to bring our closing slides, and then we'll welcome everyone to continue on after we stop our live transmission as such. So I firstly wanted to thank Professor Parker, Ivan Lee, Inez for your questions and discussions today, and everyone who's participating in this particular forum of Ask Me About Anything About Astropreneurship. Coming up, what's happening in March? Our topic is going to be space tech. And so we've got our Space Biz Breakfast that's on the 17th of March, and that'll be at the Hong Kong Club at a regular time of 8:30 to 10:30 a.m. And then traditionally what we do is we follow up the following Thursday, which would be this time slot, and looking at the webinar with a similar topic, but really focusing in more on young professionals and students, whereas our Space Biz Breakfast is focusing in on the professionals at hand. The other point I'd like to raise is that for the upcoming session that we have, as mentioned by Dr. Greg here, is that we have, we're very fortunate to have it invited a member of the Hong Kong Stock Exchange who actually chairs the listing committee on March 17th on the topic of 18C, which is specifically focused on specialty tech. So we welcome everyone to join us for that as such. So in closing, let's just look at a little bit about how we're going to be moving forward. The next slide, please, Cynthia. So those of you first-time visitors and those who have just turned back into our session as such, please join us in becoming an OASA friend. So you can scan this barcode and join and be part of registering for our OASA friend as such. So we thank you for joining us this evening. Our broadcast will be finishing up in terms of the YouTube channel, but we'll continue on after this for others who might have questions. And also we'll put it on full gallery so we could have an open discussion as such. So for everyone, thank you for this evening. Professor Quentin, Ivan Lee, Inez, and the participants here in our Ask Me About Anything About Astropreneurship of Space Debris. So with that, can everyone turn on their cameras and questions? Raise your hands. Put it into the chat. Okay, Inez, you have another question. Great. What is your question?
That wasn't my question. I was just clapping and applauding our speakers.
That's right. So let's thank everyone for all the speakers this evening in the audience as such. Others who've got questions for this evening, please turn on your cameras, turn on your mics and ask, because it's a wonderful opportunity here. I think Fletcher, you've got another question, right? Okay, Fletcher. Papa at Wong Hei, are you there? Papa at Wong Hei, are you there? All right. Wong Hei is left the room. So with that as such, the comment is thank you both to Professor Parker and Ivan for useful insights, and also the questions, Inez as such. The clear message, we need to spread out more to have people have greater awareness and see what they could do in terms of dealing with the issue of space debris. So other questions from the audience for this evening? All right, so wrapping up this evening, Professor Parker, thank you again for your contribution discussion. Ivan Lee, thank you again for yours. And of course, Inez, thank you for joining us for the first time and being our question poser and for your great questions as such. So everyone, thank you for your time this evening. We look forward to seeing you next month for our next Ask Me Anything About Astropreneurship. And with that as such, thanks and have a good evening. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for the great questions. Take care. Good evening and goodbye.